My grandmother and I came out here from Texas when I was 8 years old. So I was a Hollywood-raised kid. Actually, we were poor. I never went hungry, but we really had to watch it. And I was very shy in school. I was a nerd. So where I got my kicks and my hope and my dreams that there is some kind of a wonderful world to be had was from the movies. So we would go and see Betty Grable movies, and we'd come back home, and we would play the movies. I would be Betty Grable, or we would be Joan Crawford and Betty Davis in something, Tarzan and Jane, and then the guys would come, and we'd play Errol Flynn, you know, and Robin Hood, and get captured, and we'd draw lines where, okay, if you're captured, this is where the castle is, and they'd get you in the castle, they'd have to come and touch you to get you out, you know, and it was all just one great big wonderful game. And I remember my grandmother opening the window and saying, "Come home, Carol, come on, it's supper time," you know, and we would stay out and play until it was dark. Acting out those movies gave me whatever little background I needed to have the courage to leap into the void and find that there's something to be said about taking that chance and sticking your neck out. My first paying job was as an usherette. It was 65 cents an hour. It was during the summer, and we had to wear these funny outfits then, you know, and epaulettes and harem pants, and I mean, it was hysterical for 65 cents an hour. Also, the manager was a nut, and I think there were about 6 or 7 of us usherettes, and we would report for work at noon, and we would go downstairs to the locker room, get out our harem pants and this and that, you know, the funny outfits. And then he would buzz us, and we'd go upstairs to this very beautiful, ornate lobby and stand yards away from him in a row. And then he would point at the first little stewardess standing there, and he would go, "That was, you go to aisle 2. You go to aisle 3. You go to aisle 4. You go to the candy." That was a candy. "You, box office." Why that was box, I don't know. Me, Carol. You, that's the spot. Now the spot was in the middle of the lobby, which was an amber spotlight, because I had the loudest voice. And then he would go spot, shoot aisle 2, and shoot the balcony, so that when people would come in, I would say, "Aisle 2 straight ahead, or the stairway to your right." Once I wanted a drink of water, and I asked him, could I just like to get a drink of water? He said, "Burnett, when you want a drink of water, you snap your fingers, you get my attention." I said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "And you go like this." Now, I loved Robert Walker. Stranger Than a Train, he was the villain, and was he sensational.
Oh, that reminds me of a wonderful idea I had once. I used to put myself to sleep at night, figuring it out.
I saw that movie 57 times because I was ushering for it. He and Farley Granger meet on a train.
Want to hear one of my ideas for a perfect murder?
And Farley Granger has a wife who is a pain in the neck, and he really would like to get a divorce, and she's a real witch. And he's a famous tennis player. Robert Walker knows this. Robert Walker is insane.
2 fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all. Never saw each other before. Each one has somebody that he'd like to get rid of. So, they swap murders.
Swap murders?
Each fellow does the other fellow's murder. Then there's nothing to connect them. Each one has murdered a total stranger. Like, you do my murder, I do yours.
And Granger says, "You're nuts, and I don't ever want to see you again." But Walker goes ahead and commits the murder. And he does this in an amusement park, and he follows Granger's wife around, and she wears glasses in this. And I remember a scene when he does kill her. You don't really see it. But I tell you, it's just hair-raising. The tennis game, when Walker now is stalking Farley Granger and says, I killed your wife, now you have to kill my father. And Granger said, I didn't want you to, you shouldn't know all of that. And Walker's stalking him, and Granger is playing in a tennis match. And there is a shot of people watching the tennis match, and everybody's doing this, except Walker is just looking at Granger. Chilling, wonderful moments. I think the man who's working the carousel gets shot or something like that, or wounded, and so he falls on top of the machinery. So while Granger and Walker are fighting on the carousel, it goes out of control. When Robert Walker died, I was in college, and I couldn't go to school that day. I didn't want to leave the house. It's a relative. Somebody I loved him. I loved his work. I must say that. I didn't know the man. But I felt for him very strongly.
Hello, Guy. Who's this?
This is Mr. Turley, the chief of police.
They got you at last, huh, Guy?
Bruno, don't keep it up. Not at a time like this. You know that...
I'm sorry, Guy. I want to help you, but I don't know what I can do.
I think he's going. He's finished.
I'm standing in front of aisle 2 one night. Now, I'd been working there almost all summer, and a couple walks in, and it's the last 5 minutes of Strangers on a Train, and it is going to start again in another 15 minutes. So if they would just wait, get some popcorn, go to the John, get a drink of water, No, they wanted to be seated. And I'm barring them from going in. I said, it's the end of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. And it's right, it was right when Farley Granger and Robert Walker are fighting it out on the merry-go-round. And I mean, it's such a finish. I said, you don't want to go in now. It'll ruin it for you now. I want to sit down. And please don't. He, the manager, comes up and says, Burnett. And I looked at him. He's terrified me. He went and ripped off my epaulette. I was drummed out of the Corps, fired on the spot. The wonderful end of this, for me anyway, it's a beautiful retribution, is years later when the Chamber of Commerce said, where do you want your star on Hollywood Boulevard? It's in front of that theater.